another one of the WSA Friday webinar sessions. We are delighted to have Chris Hines doing a presentation for us tonight. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure most of you do that have signed into the webinar, Chris has been working and campaigning for the environment for 30 years and revels in inspiring positive change. Co-founder and director of Surfers Against Sewage from, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but from 1990 to 2000. Surfers Against Sewage, fantastic environmental group, described by the BBC as Britain's I believe to become the sustainability director at the Eden Project for 5 years. Given evidence to the UK Parliament, the Monopolies and Mergers Commission, European Commission, briefed the President of the European Parliament, been a special advisor to the Minister for the Environment, and appeared on a wide range of media from the BBC World Service and Panorama. In 2008, Chris was awarded an MBE for services to the environment. So massive congratulations for that. That was in the Queen's birthday honours, and I believe an honorary Doctor of Science from the University of Plymouth. The list is endless here, Chris, and I'm only halfway through. You've given a wide range of presentations to loads of different groups, and your current situation, Chris is now aiming to deliver positive change by working with clients who have a shared vision, including sitting on the BBC's Sustainability Advisory Group. So Chris is working on strategic planning, communications, leadership, and embedding all of the sustainability principles as part of a profitable business, and strongly believes that business can be a force for good in a challenging world. And it's fantastic to have you on board, Chris. Really, really looking forward to this. So over to you. We're scheduled, everyone, for about an hour. Sometimes we fall a little bit short, more than often we extend a little bit. So stay with us, and we'll look forward to your questions coming through on the chat. So over to you, Chris.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, is that up?
Yeah.
Say surfing can change the world.
Yep.
It does. Okay, cool. So good evening, everybody. It's like lovely to be here Friday night. So this is going to be kind of fast and wild. I've got over 100 slides. Most of them are pictures, so don't worry about kind of like death by PowerPoint. But I'm going to go at it like the clappers, or like I've had the bad case of sewage contamination and I've got the shits. So that's how quickly it's all going to come out. So my proposition is that surfing can change the world, or can surfing and SUPing change the world? And notice I've changed that to a question, because I think, and I'll come to it later, but I think we needed to act and we need to change our industry and the way that we work. So a little bit of background, who I am. I was born in Plymouth in 1962, grew up on the edge of Plymouth and then moved to the edge of Dartmoor. My dad was a GP. Looks like in the bottom right picture, he's kind of like giving me some weird and wonderful stuff that's making me pretty happy. The top picture you can see I'm on a rock covered in seaweed. And this was what they gave to us. They gave us this exposure, my parents, to the natural environment. And Dartmoor, I still go to the beach in Dartmoor for, that space and that reconnection with nature. And when I ever feel burnt or tired, I go back there. I'm missing Dartmoor terribly at the moment, but it's great to have the beaches. And so one of the other things that happened with my parents was they gave me surfing. They took us to the beach. Apparently, I first went to Widmouth when I was about 4 months old. I had my first wooden belly board when I was about 5. And then I kind of got my first surfboard, which is a complete pig of a board. It was like this yellow molded laminated thing before pop outs and everything. God knows how it was made. But I saved up all my school dinner money, would come home in the evening and mum would say, why are you eating so much? And that was because I was saving all those little, 25p's towards my surfboard and my wetsuit. Cleaning all the cars, cleaning the gutters, all those things. And that instilled in me, I guess, 2 things. One, a work ethic, but also an understanding that if I had something, it had real value and I would treasure it. And you know, sometimes I go down the beach today, nowadays, and there's some guys down there. And at one point, I saw this guy, and his kid's 11, and he said, "Oh yeah, he's 9," and he said, "Oh no, he's on his big wave board today." And I kind of went, "Well, how many boards has he got?" And this kid's got 3. You know, like, and those are changing times, and I think that sometimes we can again pile too much pressure on kids and things, but that thing of really valuing what it is that you have and what you've got, and we need to look after and treasure things. I really wish I had that old Bilbo board there. But I also grew up at a time where I was part of Team Marigold, and we were talking the other day about how you know, how good surfing kit is now. But, you know, I was of that era where my first suit was a secondhand nappy diving suit, kids one. Then I managed to kind of get a early gull with a zip right up the front. But I had boots, but I was a strong member of Team Marigold. And if I was feeling really flush, they would be flock lined, and maybe, you know, I'd spend 70 pence on them. I have a love of trees. I lived in one for 2 years. No, not really. But this woman was a massive influence on me, and I'll come back to her later. That wagging finger. These were the times we grew up in. You know, we're talking about unemployment and things, but you know, I am a 1 in 10. That was a real statistic back then, and that whole kind of UB40 era. But I also lived in the time of punk music and Tom Robinson Band, Power in the Darkness. And you'll see that fist a couple of times in the presentation. That fist of universal solidarity, sticking together through thick and thin. People of all backgrounds, all you know, gender, race, everything. That fist is important, and it's that sign of universal solidarity. Equal rights. Again, this was the music giving you a flavor of when it was that I kind of grew up. And again, we used to drive around in the kind of like late 70s, early 80s going, you know, with that on the tape deck in the car. Equal rights, stand up for your rights, but also your lefts if you're a goofy footer. But I guess I learned during that time about how lucky we are to live on this planet. And I think there's a thing called the deal, and the deal is that we give something back. You know, we've all, you know, I've just eaten a lovely meal. I'll have a roof over my head and I'll be warm and secure tonight. Millions of people don't get that, but we get to live here, and we should give something back. And it is an amazing planet. You know, this is the Dingle Peninsula, murmuration of starlings. You know, if you wanted BAE Systems to create that, all those amazing little birds, and they were all kind of like, you know, land and go whoosh at the same time, they may be able to, for several $1 trillion, make that. They could never then reproduce. So it's an amazing planet, and we give something back. The best quote summarizing that: activism is the rent I pay for living on the planet, by Alice Walker, the author and campaigner. Into the surface against sewage element. So taking that thing of activism as the rent I pay. This is our local beach, Porthtowan. You know, on a cranking day, it was like that today, I'm sure, when I was looking at it, if I'd been in the water, which I wasn't. But, you know, an amazing break. It's known, I've got a House of Commons Select Committee report down there that says that Mr. Hines made reference to the local beach, which Porthtowan, which locals had dubbed the name Porth Tampon because of the dreadful state of it. So that was one of my high points. I managed to get that in a House of Parliament Select Committee report. Little note on this one here of the way that we treat our coastal waters historically. Just next to that chimney is part of the mining heritage. But if you were to go just to the right of that and crawl into a cave, which we did on a couple of occasions, and clamber up onto a rock ledge, you would find 2 9-10-inch diameter porcelain pipes. And that was because up on the top there, it's now RAF Portreath, but it used to be known as Nantucket Chemical Warfare Plant. And they would produce CS gas, sarin, all kinds of nasties there, second only to Porton Down in the UK. And they would literally flush what they didn't want straight into the sea out of those pipes. At one point, we took samples of them from those pipes. We submitted them to a lab, but we were told that it was confidential information and we could never see what the results were that we got out of there. But this picture conjures up why we started Surfers Against Sewage, why we campaigned. And it was for the simple joy of being able to use the coastal environment for the wonderful thing that it is. you know, for both mental and physical well-being. It's an amazing place. And that was our aim that we held in our hearts and our minds at all times. And everything I think in life is a combination of hearts and minds. Back in the 90s, very few, you know, surfing was tiny compared with what it was now. SUPing was like a distant imagination, something out on the horizon, probably nobody perceived of, although it probably was done by some ancient tribes somewhere or other. So we knew that we also had to campaign on behalf of all of the 20 million people who use the UK coastline, and that's good for tourism. And, you know, children between the ages of 6 and 11, most at risk from infection due to the lost inherited immunity from their mothers, yet to fully develop their own. And, you know, I can still pull those little nuggets, those little sound bites of campaigning knowledge out of my brain, you know, nearly 30 years later. So that was our aim, but we had a problem. I'll quote Margaret Thatcher. I said I'd come back to her. In 1989 on BBC Nature, she stated about the privatisation of the water industry on BBC Nature that all sewage was treated before discharge. That was a downright lie. Every single day, there were 400 million gallons of completely crude sewage hitting our coastal waters when she said that. From Newquay to Newcastle, Brighton to Blackpool, literally what you flushed down the toilet went straight into the sea without even a basic sieve in place. This is the Camborne outfall pipe down that used to drift and meet up with the Portreath and Redruth one, and then hit Porthtown at high tide. And literally surfing at Porthtown at that time, Porth Tampon, was like surfing in the toilet of the largest conurbation in Cornwall. This is the end of that pipe. You just clamber down the cliff path. There it was. This is an amazing haircut, although it's going back to those kind of days now, different color. But again, we would find, you know, new hypodermic needles were just a common find on our coastal waters. And this isn't a set up picture. That was the state of our coastal rock pools and things. You know, a lump of human feces with a panty liner around it. So that was so we knew our aim. That was the problem. But we knew that we had to find a solution. And we looked high and low, and we found in the island of Jersey that they, instead of building a long sea outfall and just pumping this stuff further out to sea, they'd actually put in this thing called ultraviolet light disinfection. And in '94, I wrote some evidence to the Houses of Parliament Select Committee. And on the basis of the written evidence, they asked me to go and give oral evidence. So I went up to London, put a suit and tie on, because I always used to wear, you know, I sussed out early days of campaigning that it didn't pay to dress down when you were in some of those situations, because they would diss you. You had to kind of show respect, and no one really knew whether I was wearing my wetsuit underneath my suit or whatever. But when I was in front of this select committee, they quizzed me. They said, well, how confident are you in this UV technology? And I said, based on the bacterial count in their outfall pipe, I would feel 50 times safer sticking my head up Jersey's pipe than I would bathing on beaches such as Porthtowan, Fistral, Polzeth, all of those kind of ones, Brighton's beaches. And I made that statement. They noted it down, and it appeared in the final report. But about a week after I made that statement, I got a phone call from the island of Jersey, and they said, look, we've heard what you've said. This would make amazing publicity for our tourist department. Would you come on over? And this is Jersey's outfall pipe. And about an hour before this picture was taken, the water was up to the edge of that pipe. And on the top of it, we had BBC, ITV, Sky News, Reuters, and the Press Association. And I turned around and I jumped off it and I paddled as hard as I could. And I duck dived into the mouth of 100,000 people's sewage. And I got about a meter up the pipe before I was blown back out with the force of it. But I stand by what I said. It's looked, tasted and smelt cleaner than the beaches that we were bathing on. And it was £9 million cheaper than building a long sea outfall. So we found our solution. Welsh Water, Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water, were the first water company to shift. And we would, you know, hassle the hell out of water companies. And I'll come to that in a second. But Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water, even when we were nailing them on the beaches, they would always kind of ask whether we could meet them for lunch and discuss what it was that we wanted to see. And they tried to understand us. And when they saw us do that piece of work and the UV disinfection come through, we got a fax one day saying that they were going to launch a full sewage treatment policy with UV disinfection for all of their coastal and estuarine discharges. And then we got the invitation to go and cut the ribbon on Criccieth up in North Wales. So we cut the ribbon. It was our name on the brass plaque of their first UV treatment works, because we'd always said we would be as strong supporters of the right as we would critics of the wrong. And what happened then as well was we then had a big stick with which to beat up the other water companies. We'd broken the ranks of a monopoly. Second water company to shift were Wessex Water. This is Porlock, and what's being poured over our heads. And the gentleman on the right is Colin Skellett. At the time, he was chief exec of Wessex Water. He's still the chairman. And what's being poured over our heads there is what came out of their outfall pipe. And it's 99.98% removal of all viruses and bacteria. So that was our solution. How do you create that pressure for change? Running around the country with a 10-foot inflatable turd, wetsuits and gas masks is a darn good way to get publicity. And when you get publicity, you drive things up the public agenda. And when you get them up the public agenda, they get up the political agenda. And pretty damn similar to this picture here. I can remember doing a bit of work up in Scarborough with Roger Povey up there. And we did a press call there just before on the Friday, and on the Saturday morning we kind of went, we went in to get the paper, and there was nothing in the Yorkshire Post. We thought, no, that's a bloody shame. And then I kind of went to pick up the Guardian, and there we were. This picture basically was front cover, the main picture on the front page of the Guardian. And that's the kind of reach that we were getting with those images. Politics. We went to the Houses of Parliament within 10 months of forming, because we knew that the only way really, we could stay on the beaches and campaign and whinge, but we knew that we had to take our beaches to the corridors of power. And we literally phoned up the Houses of Parliament and said, look, we want to come. And they said, come on up, have a pre-meeting and look around. You want to book a meeting room. And the day we got there in March 1991, we had a Channel 4 TV documentary, we did BBC Breakfast News in the morning, Capital FM, etc., etc. And about 90 of us turned up there from across the UK. A coachload of people went up from Cornwall. And the day we arrived, the government announced a £2 million spend into research into the health effects of bathing and surfing and swimming in sewage contaminated seawater. So that very act of stepping forward triggered that. And, I forgot to say at the beginning of this, none of us had any campaigning experience. None of us had any A-levels in science or anything like that. We just knew that we had to go off and do this. We worked with the media. We were absolute media hounds. And anywhere in the UK, if there was a camera there and a news story to be had, we would go and do it. And at one point, one of our members rang up and said, look, I'm a scriptwriter for BBC Casualty. Let's do one. And we worked on a program that went out on, to 14 million viewers at that point on a Saturday night, 50 minutes. And it was our story. They couldn't use the word surfers against sewage, but the props department spent £1,000 on buying our T-shirts and sweatshirts. We were all over it. And it was exactly our story. And you can imagine being the minister for the environment or a boss of a water company and sitting there on a nice Saturday evening with your glass of wine and spitting that out as they saw us take over 50 minutes at 8:10 on a Saturday evening. We used the law. Section 79E of the Environmental Protection Act 1990 states that if there's an accumulation or a deposit prejudicial to health or a nuisance, then the council shall, no question, issue an abatement notice against the water company. Now, we warned our local council, we showed them the law, we showed them their own evidence of Porthtowan, and we said, we give you 6 months to think about this, and then we're going to come back and ask you formally. We went back 6 months later, and they said, you're a bunch of surfers, go to hell, in effect. So on behalf of these two ladies, Sarah and Rachel, they were the plaintiffs. They just wanted to be able to allow their children to play on the beach. Without picking up panty liners and condoms and things. We took them to the Royal Courts of Justice in London and we won. We set case precedent for the whole of the UK. Footnote to that, these two ladies, again, left school with no A-levels. Sarah on the left went back, got educated, and is a teacher in Redruth now. And Rachel on the right went back, got her A-levels, got a degree, got a master's, and is now Dr. Rachel Shelley of Marine Studies, Marine Biology. We bought shares in every single water company, gave us complete right of access to their annual general meetings to ask any question we want. And we would give, we would be interviewed on things like BBC Breakfast News, the business section, pages of the Financial Times, etc. And we would affect the share price of water companies. They absolutely hated it. We could say which, you know, when Welsh Water made their shift and Wessex, we were saying those are good investments. This came up this week, the amazing Welsh crew, and you know, I was talking to Ben and Chris earlier in the week about this, and you know, we used to do the Toxic Wave Trophy down at Langland. You'll see Frenchie and Carwin was there as well. But that was amazing times up there, an incredibly strong bunch of people. And if we thought we had problems down in Cornwall, you know, BP Chemicals and British Steel, wowee, you should have seen the list of chemicals that were legally on their discharge consents. So this is us doing an action outside BP Chemicals at Bagland Bay. You see Frenchie there and Carwin just on his shoulder with a coffin with a CRIP. Now, again, you know, I think that made, you know, Steve Wright in the afternoon type show. But again, probably one of the most shocking bits of sewage contamination I ever saw was in Hartlepool. And this is the front page of Pipeline News, our newsletter. And all of these items on the kind of railings on the promenade are all panty liners. This was 30,000 people discharging, a housing estate of 30,000 people discharging out of a short outfall pipe about 200 yards from the houses. And all this stuff used to come over with an onshore wind and dump onto the railings. At one point, they even had to close the primary school because of the amount of panty liners in the bloody school playground. This is a brilliant man called Glyn Ford, who again phoned up and said, look, I'm a member of the European Parliament. I'm a member of SAS. Do you want to come and meet the president? So this is us over in, and go back to that picture, and there it is, the inflatable turd again on the kind of steps of the European Parliament. And this is us upstairs briefing. The chap on the right is Egon Klepsch, who was president of the Parliament at the time. And we were saying, look, you know, this is what's wrong with the directives. This is how they can be approved, and this is how you can treat sewage. So we were reaching that kind of level. We funded all of this. We were, you know, by the mid-1990s, we had 18,000 paid up members, a turnover of 420,000 a year just from sales of T-shirts, membership and sweatshirts, and an amazing fundraising ball, black tie and board shorts, 7 o'clock in the evening till 7 in the morning. Bands like Faithless played for no fee, just enough to pay their crew, their roadies. Again, we were talking the other night about this, and I can remember once I got a message that Steve Daniels and maybe Charlie with him, but Steve was after some tickets, and we'd sold out. We used to sell out kind of months before the actual gig and never tell anybody who was playing. And the message I got was Steve wants to come and he wants some tickets, and he's got these couple of people with him, Johnny Boy Gomes and Hans Hedemann or something. And I went, oh God, get him tickets. And there was this moment where Steve England, who runs Carve now, was on stage with Johnny Boy Gomes and Hans Hedemann, and Johnny Boy Gomes and Hans were saying, this is amazing, because they're all, you know, 4,000 people all decked up having an amazing party, 4 clean seas. And Johnny Boy said, it's amazing, you're all kind of welcome anytime. And Steve England said, there you have it, everybody. Johnny Boy Gomes has said it's all fine to come paddle out at Pipeline. So just a little anecdote there. To conclude that part of the story, and then I'm going to go really fast through the next bit. In late 96, I did a press call down in Brighton with the late Michael Meacher, who was Shadow Environment spokesman. And he made a statement to camera. He said, under the European Directive and Wastewater Treatment Directive, Brighton needs primary treatment. And I stopped him. I said, that's wrong. And he looked at his assistant, and his assistant said, this guy knows shit. He lives, breathes, he is Mr. Poop. And so Mr. Meacher said, well, what should I say? And I said, it's secondary treatment. He's made that statement. May 1997, massive landslide to Labour. And all of those coastal constituencies that went from Conservative blue to Labour red we'd done our job and we'd driven sewage contamination of beaches up to the point where it was the big environmental concern. Labour were looking for a quick win. The water sector were outperforming the FTSE 100 by 35%. So there was some kind of like fat to be cut from them. And in September 97, I got 24 hours notice to go to be a special advisor to the Secretary of State, Michael Meacher. And I walked out, there was basically 3 people from the Department of the Environment, 3 senior people from the environment agencies, Mr. Meacher, 2 other advisors and myself. I had free rein to ask any question I wanted. And I walked out of there about 2 hours later, punching the air. And 6 weeks after that, the government ruled that all sewage should receive at least secondary treatment with UV disinfection for 14 out of the 20 million people discharging the coastal waters. And to this day, there are no continuous discharges of crude sewage around our coastal waters. When it overloads with pouring rain, our systems are overloaded and we have stormwater discharges. But we won. £5.5 billion of spend on our coastal waters. And I'm going to play a quick compliment. You know, lots of people in the surfing industry, those 18,000 members, lots of people from varying companies helped us. But I had to give a mention to this guy, Derek O'Neill. At the time, he was running Billabong UK. And when he then went to Billabong Europe, and every year he would let me know that there was a deposit in our bank account and he would ask for no publicity whatsoever. But he used to put 10 grand in our bank every year. And his only message was, keep going, go give them hell. So I just wanted to pay testament to Derek there. Looking back, how do we make it happen? We knew our aim, we identified the problem, we found a solution, we created the environment for change, we would use the media, regulators, politics, we negotiated, we stayed at the table, we knew who our friends were, people like that MP, we knew who our foes were, we had our own funding, we had an amazing team. You know, the only reason I was able to be in Brussels or Strasbourg was because other people were back in the office, opening envelopes and stuffing, you know, the T-shirts, etc. Jobs that I all did. And we made it fun. We used toilet humor, you know, blatantly. And it was a deadly serious issue at times. You know, in my last year, 1999, I gave evidence at the coroner's inquest into the death of 7-year-old Heather Preen. And, you know, for her parents, it was concluded that sewage contamination was a possible route of infection. As I said, I'm going to go real quick now, but we use surfing as a vehicle to sell clean seas. You know, it was tiny at the times. And this is where when I wrap up, you'll see where I'm going. So it was a communications and marketing campaign, really. And we were quick and nimble of foot, a bit like Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. We would like run in and bap, bap, bap the water companies on the nose. And then as they lumbered around, we'd come in behind and give them a quick, swift kick up the bum. So that agility of campaigning and being fast and fleet of foot is important. And again, I think there's a spirit of surfing and supping coming across there. I then went to this bonkers place. So I had a year off after, you know, because I'd always said I'd quit as soon as I'd achieved what we set out to achieve. And we achieved it. I went to the Eden Project and I learned about how we all live on this amazing planet. If we all wanted to live like the average American, we'd need 5 of them. Average European, we'd need 3.5. We've got one planet. We've got to get smart. We all have an impact from the day we're born till the day we get into one of those. And also we need to be happy. We need to live in relationship, you know, a happy relationship with our planet, not exploitative. We look at this comes out every year, the World Economic Forum, just before Davos. And this is this year's one. And obviously it isn't going to happen. But just you'll see some green dots over on the right. And on the right is most likely, unlikely to happen. Oh, sorry, likely to happen, but really significant impact. And those greens are all about climate change and extreme weather and biodiversity loss. But look at that top little one up in the red. That's infectious disease. And COVID has shifted from an unlikely thing into the thing that's really grilling us at the moment. But if you think COVID's been tough, then if we don't sort climate change, we're going to hell in a handcart. It will cause massive, you know, melting of our glaciers, etc., huge climate change. and it'll affect the poorest people in the planet. But it also is affecting us right now. You know, this is the Dawlish railway line, and it's all over the UK. The bushfires raging in California and Australia. You know, last time I was in Australia, about my partner's Australian, we went back to a friend's wedding, Swilly, the surf photographer, his son. And, you know, we were moving around trying to dodge fires. It was scary, scary. And this is Misha's restaurant at Burley. You know, literally had swell running straight through and smashing straight through. You imagine that being the Blue Bar or the beach at the bar at the back of your local beach. And we're acidifying our oceans. We're destroying the reefs that we kind of travel around the world to go and surf and see. And then the world is in, you know, this is a UN report, 1 million species facing extinction. And yet we're still arrogant enough to think that we're not one of those 1 million species. We will be. And it's sparking wars. You know, again, you know, a research by, again, and I think this was UNICEF, climate change helped trigger the Syrian war. And what did that lead to? Mass migration. And then look at the political instability, you know, used and enhanced by the likes of Farage, and he's back on the bloody campaign trail today. We need to get our heads around climate change bloody urgently. But can surfing and supping help change the world? Using that kind of marketing mentality? I think it can, but we need to sort ourselves out. The boards that we ride are toxic to the nth degree. You know, this is us with Russell Winter. When I was at Eden, myself and a chap called Pat Hudson, we said, let's make some eco boards, and as a provocation to the industry. And this is a board made of balsa, grown in the biomes, laminated in hemp cloth and a castor oil resin. We got some publicity off that. And then we kind of worked with Homeblown biocomposites over in Portreath. We blew some blanks made from 28% plant-based fuel materials, oils. And this was Nathan Hedge kind of test blasting it down at Fistral. But we then kind of found out that, well, we just couldn't get backing. We just couldn't get the industry to engage. And you think how much money is being spent in that industry. And it needs hundreds of thousands of pounds, you know, in R&D and, you know, to get our products sorted. We didn't get much publicity. So Ben, who was the kind of PR guy for Eden Project, said, well, let's make an eco cricket box. And it was all going kind of very well. So this is his box to protect his genitals. And it was kind of going quite well. And then a ball went through the helmet and hit him in the eye. And from that kind of accident, we got front page of the Metro in London. We got the Mumbai News in India. And we got Test Match Special in Australia when England were playing the Ashes, looking at eco products and how we can hopefully try and make that shift. And this, whoops, sorry, wrong one. Oh no, so there should have been a picture in there of Dylan, who is Ben's son, which proved that the box worked. Throwaway society. Sitting outside Blue a couple of years ago, big fat Volvo pulls up, opens the back door, guy chucks all of this out. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, we've been on holiday for 2 weeks. We don't want to take this home. Outrageous. Single use, all of that. Being Porthtown, it lasted for about an hour before it was nicked and run away. Ocean Plastics, you know, this is a friend of mine, Andy Hughes, amazing book. If you can find a copy of it, go get one. But all the work that SAS and loads of others are doing now, you know, our Blue Planet, these are Andy's images of amazing kind of, you know, plastic almost as an art, as a provocation again. But, you know, that can be turned. These panels here are made from recycled plastic. This worktop is made from recycled plastic. We must be able to do this to our own industry. And on the bottom right here, you'll see a little chap there, the NA kind of white guy in the picture. That's Nev Hyman. And Nev has been looking at taking all these plastics, and that house behind him is made from recycled plastic. That's a Nev house. So we are kind of starting to do some stuff. We're addicted to flying. We've got to kind of address that one. This is a brilliant quote from the owners of Rough Guide and Lonely Planet. Fly less, stay longer. I had to mention this guy. This is kind of the kiss of death. This guy drove 300 miles to Cornwall last week and 300 miles back so he could surf his bloody jet board. you know, and he was saying it was good for business. I think that was a Ratner moment, a Ratner Jewelries, where he actually has probably condemned his product as possibly the worst ever advertising campaign. Why would you do that? And why would you stick your finger up and give surfing a bad name? If you want to know about sustainability in surfing, this is a great book to go and find. This is put together by Greg Bourne from University of Plymouth and Jess Ponting from San Diego Surf Research Unit over at their university. And there's lots of bits of writing from leading people from around the world. Yeah, I would say myself included, but I am included in it. But lots of really people looking at surf tourism, surf products, how we, you know, lots and lots of really good reading. Go find that book. It's a good read. And yet, you know, we are seeing some efforts from the industry, such as Firewire and the, you know, we're elevating the surfing experience with innovative design, new materials, etc. You know, the brilliant work that our wetsuits are doing, but should all of our wetsuits now be moving to Ulex and, you know, the recycled lining? I think that we should. We need to get going. We need, you know, there's no time to talk about any of this stuff anymore. We need to be making these decisions. And others are, you know, surfing, when I used the words at the beginning, you know, can surfing, I started giving that talk in 2013 when I went to a kind of global surf cities conference out in Australia. And it's depressing how slowly the industry is moving. It really is. Compared to people, you know, Albert Sustainable Television Production from the BBC, you'll see it on the bottom of programs like Spring Watch, you'd expect to, but it's on Coronation Street, it's on Strictly, it's on Match of the Day. And that means that they've considered the environment and the carbon footprint of all of these programs. Carbon footprint, if you haven't done your carbon footprint, get on there. I would make a plea, if you do nothing else off the back of this talk, go to WWF carbon footprint and enter your footprint. Because the moment you do that, you start to understand. And if you start to understand, you can start to address it. And lots of handy hints there as to how you can do. This is mine. It's kind of declined, obviously, because travel has gone down a whole lot. So I'm kind of only 70% of what's needed at the moment. So that would be good. What was meant to be there? This is, so about a year ago, a year and 2-3 months, I was asked to go and give a talk down at the United Nations, a youth summit at the UN in Geneva. And I thought, and if you look at this wall here, this is one of those, the proper UN, you know, with all the seats and everything in there. But look at the wall, check the waves on the wall up there. I was amazed. I found that really encouraging. And there were 200 students there. And I said to them, look at the power in your pocket. There's 200 of you here. You're each going to spend £9,000-ish a year for 3 years. And if you start, that's like a collective £5.4 million of money in your pockets. And you should be asking the universities what they're doing about sustainability. Do they use renewable energy? You know, what do they do with their waste? And then I kind of just did a quick calculation for the people watching and tuned in tonight. You know, say there's 100 people and we all have an earning of 25k a year. That's £2.5 million a year that we have as a collective spending power. Now, we make choices as to where we put our money. We make choices with every surfboard, every wetsuit, every SUP we buy. We make choices. And we should be demanding of the people who deliver this to us that they deliver, that they shift. That's a big thing. And we do have that power. And you think about how much you're going to spend in your life on bits of kit. It's considerable. And go and look at people like Brewdog's punked up plan to make Earth great again. It's stunning. It's a real leadership thing. So that's kind of a company taking that lead. B corporations, if you're running a company and you want to do the right thing, go and find B corporation and do the business impact assessment. It's free and it gives you a complete take on all aspects of your company, from the governance through your workers, i.e. staff, community, environment, and your customers. And it gives you a score. But the initial business impact assessment is a complete eye-opener. And it's a brilliant website with lots of support and suggestions and understanding of why they're asking you those questions. Go get this book. If you want to read one really good, encouraging book, There Is No Planet B, A Handbook for the Make or Break Years by Mike Berners-Lee. And you'll recognize that name. He is the brother of Tim Berners-Lee. And Mike is one of the best carbon footprinting guys on the planet. Imagine being mum and dad Berners-Lee, producing 2 children like that. You're staggering. Have faith in the future. We are going to rise to this. This is Lord Bird, John Bird of The Big Issue. This is a bill that's going through Parliament at the moment called the Future Generations Bill that will require that all actions and expenditure by public bodies, all decisions, take into consideration the well-being of future generations. That's a massive, great thing. And again, write to your MP and demand that they support that. And then, you know, how mainstream has this become? How big a shift? The BBC Reith lectures were done this year by Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England. And just, if you just listen to the 4th one and then maybe go and listen to the other 3, but it is from climate crisis to real prosperity, real values, where we learn to live in harmony with each other and with our planet. It's an inspiring listen. It's about half an hour, but it's well worth it. You know, grab a beer or glass of wine or whatever your kind of indulgence and just give it a listen. And, you know, this book, Jonathan Porritt, someone I know, I'm, you know, privileged to know Jonathan. He's probably one of Britain's best environmental campaigners ever. And he wrote this book and he said it in the character of a chap called Alex Mackay. And Mackay was born in the year 2000 and it's set in the year 2050. And he says, we've made it. There were the world food riots of 2023 when tens of thousands of people died on the streets of capital cities around the world. New Orleans finally has been abandoned, but largely we've made it. We've built our world. And, you know, being Jonathan, everything's referenced from our food systems to our transport to our health, well-being and finance and all of those things. It's a great book. Go find it. So kind of just to wrap up, surfing is used and surf imagery is used to sell 10 tons of crap. Some of it's crap, some of it's quite nice, like a pint of Guinness, but surfing is the ad man's dream. And my proposition to everybody here watching tonight is that if we can sort out our own sport and we can reference that, then people will latch on to that and say that yes, surfing and supping are helping lead that way forwards. I'm a moaning bloody environmentalist. I'm, you know, delighted to say that I was given this honor, but that honor was on behalf of a tribe of people, of 18,000 people and everybody who ever supported. That wasn't just me, that was us. And if we can capture that same energy, that same make a difference, be a bit mad, as we go forward into the 21st century, we can make a change and it needs us. The challenges are huge, but haven't they always been? Tension is good, it drives change. You know, I've jumped over a 10-foot inflatable, 10-foot fence before with my wetsuit on, gas mask on my head. The inflatable turd was lobbed after me and I kind of ran up and I got within a yard of Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister. And the hand of MI5 security kind of stopped me and they said, that's close enough, Mr. Hines. But I was able to say, you know, you do realize, Mr. Blair, while you're in Cornwall, if you do a doo-doo, it's going straight in the sea. And he kind of said, yep, that's very interesting, Mr. Hines, noted that down. Be light and quick if we're 70% sure it's the right thing to do and the 30% ain't going to kill us or cause any major damage. Keep moving. Be attractive. This thing of us, we have the power to tell stories. Believe that the human species can do anything. Be passionate, believe, be optimistic and challenge the norm. And if you don't think you can, then remember that a bunch of surfers with no campaigning experience whatsoever helped turn that into that and that. And a bunch of dreamers at Eden turned that into that and that. Then just think what we can do. Thank you.
Well, Chris, that was totally awesome. What an inspiration and fascinating. Fascinating to listen to all of that. We've got loads of questions, so cool. I've apologise now if we don't get through all of them.
Yeah, no, fire away. I'm all yours.
Some of them are quite related, so I'll try and go through them. But thank you ever so much for that.
Real pleasure.
I mean, you're clearly obvious how motivated you and driven that you are. What I would like to ask is, surely in the early days, were there times when you felt, well, we're not actually getting anywhere here? And how did you keep yourself motivated in those early days till you had that first success with the first water company?
I get that there's a certain amount of, every time someone said to us, you won't do anything, you'll never, you know, it's that kind of slight, you know, you grit and you go, you want to bet, you watch this. So, and that kind of mocking of water companies as well, but also understanding how incompetent some of them were.
Yeah,
you could sense that you could drive a kind of, you know, a bus through some of their kind of their structures, and you know, we I mean, we had, you know, like a full page picture of Justin Ward taken, the photograph by an old friend who died a couple of years ago, Howard Judd, and that gas mask was in, you know, the Daily Mirror. And we were getting that kind of coverage within 2-3 months of forming, and every little bit helped. And every bit that we did, we just went, well, that's amazing. Who'd have thought this? So and you kind of kept having to pinch yourself. But also, when you went back to the sea, you'd get another panty liner in the face.
Yeah.
You get, you know, you were talking about it the other day. You get
I remember the days.
Another third. So you couldn't go back. You were always going forwards.
Talking about moving forwards, Chris, one of the viewers tonight is saying that, or is asking, he runs a SUP school on a beach that seen its ratings slip from good to poor in the last 3 years. Okay. The council and the water company keep saying that they're on it, but nothing's changing. And so he's asking, what can he do right now? And the exact words were, how can he put a rocket up? And how can we question? How can he get some more movement from his?
So go and talk to Surfers Against Sewage straight away. You know, contact them and say what's happening here. They have a brilliant, you know, I mean, hats off. I still pay my membership. I will for every, you know, for as long as I live and beyond. Contact them. They have a whole network of regional reps. So get it, find out who your regional rep is and get in contact with them. But all water companies, every sewage treatment and combined storm overflow has a what's known as a discharge consent. Get hold of that they are held, they're public domain, they're held by the Environment Agency. Find out what it is, find out how often it's discharging, and it'll probably be in breach of that. And then formally ask them, you know, put it in writing and say, this is a formal request. Yeah. Because once it's formal, it is properly formal. Copy your MP in and copy the media in.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, one of the things that we learned really early on was that they want you just to write a letter to them. But if you send it to the media, then suddenly thousands of people are interested in what's happening about that outfall pipe.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that's great advice. So I hope that helps. And I don't want to name names.
There's a little document that I wrote as well called Ship v. the Law that can also help. So if you contact me, Chris and Ben, I'll kind of forward that as well. It just explains what those laws are that we used.
Yeah, I just want to point out to all of the listeners and viewers tonight that if you have any further questions at the end of this webinar, just send us through to your queries to info@waterskillsacademy.com, and we'll do our best to put them to Chris and get.
I'll respond. Yeah,
excellent. Marianne's asking. She said Marianne works for the UK Coaching as a senior coach developer, and Marianne said, do you have any advice about how we can encourage people to be more active outdoors and embed principles of looking after our environment as we move in it?
I think something like referencing that deal, what I refer to as the deal, you know, it's understanding that by gaining joy from something, we should want to protect it.
Yeah.
And that's that deal. So kind of build something around that and say, have you had an amazing day? You know, are you really loving this? And if they say yes, then say, well, we got to do something about it. You know,
Yeah.
you got to be part of the team that's protecting. And
Well,
I think that's a good mechanism for doing so.
yeah, and I think the youth of today, I mean, I have two, I can't say young daughters now, but they're in their 20s, but their awareness is so much more than when I was that age. And I think it's education, isn't it? Education is a big answer with all of this.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you the question. Chris, we mentioned this the other day when we were having a quick chat, and I can see a big smile coming across Charlie's face right now as I pose this to you. But one of the questions coming in from a good friend of mine, Charlie, was, do you think that every generation of surfer thinks that they or we had it better than the generation that follows?
So yeah, if Charlie's watching, and Steve, you know, hello, lovely to see you. I think that we all do think that, and you know, but then there's kind of pros and cons of that. So, for example, you know, there were people in the water today, and they were warm. If we'd gone in the water to, you know, we had marigolds. Whereas now, like, you know, the kit is amazing, but the downside of it is the crowds. So we used to kind of like go to the beach and there'd be no one there. And the reason no one was there was because, well, surfing wasn't as popular, but also it was hard paddling out with Team Marigold or worse. So I think one of the things that I do think is something that's coming at us is how we relate to each other and how we respect each other in the water. And that's a challenge. That is a big challenge at the moment.
Yeah, it's becoming, as we know, you mentioned that advertisers have been jumping on the back of surfing for a very, very, very long time. And, you know, our waters are becoming more popular, and you know, as a consequence, there is actions that follow that. But it is, as we all know, it's about respecting people that are new to the sport, isn't it? And respecting those that have been in the sport for a long time. I would like to stick my neck out and say, well, growing up in the 70s, learning to surf, shall we say, in the 80s, I definitely think I had the best time.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite spot. Absolutely, I walked up and down the little secret cliff path to it today, and I can remember going up and down that little path, you know, 39 years ago, and now, and absolutely, I had it. But the banks are still the same. Some years they're not. But and I think we probably all do think that. But that's great.
Yeah.
Because but what we need to do is to communicate it and respect it. And I think it's so important for us to capture some of the stories. You know, Alex Williams's book's brilliant that he's just done. You know, it's so nice to see everybody's stories in there. And that's just from one little location. All of this stuff can just whiz by, you know. Amazing people who helped SAS do some of the things that we did.
Yeah, you're a fantastic team.
Fantastic. Treasures of people.
How many members do they have right now then?
I don't know. You should ask Hugo to come, or one of the SS team to come and do this again. But they're full on. They're an amazing team. And
still campaigning for exactly the same issues, or
but lots around ocean plastic, climate change. I think they're just releasing a report on climate change. I was in contact with Hugo a little bit today. I got interviewed by a Japanese journalist for a kind of a global scale newspaper today, and I kind of then passed him to Hugo, and I saw Hugo saying they got a report coming out. And but it's. And again, I think it's worth remembering for everybody watching this that, you know, there's no question that SAS in its day, and probably still, is one of the more radical campaigning groups.
Well, I mean, isn't it amazing to think, like you said back in the day, a bunch of surfers from Porthtowan
and St Agnes,
I just get that one in. forming an organisation that, there's no denying has inspired, I'm sure, many an organisation globally.
Mm. Yeah. And Hugo, and the great thing now is that and again, like with the internet and stuff like that, and Hugo, I think he was a co-founder of and helped host the Global Wave Conference when it was held over here. And there were probably best part of 100 different surfing organizations from around the world came to that. With kind of Greg Long was there, he spoke. It was an amazing event, and Curran was there. It was, that's a real testimony to the power and that kind of network of surfers and around the world. That's a real thing that we should be proud of. No other sport. No others. I mean, I guess skiing and some other bits care a bit about, but no other sport has really stepped up.
Well, we've got some fantastic ambassadors that work with the WSA. I don't have time to mention all of them, but Cal Major is. I don't know if you've come across Cal. Yeah. Fantastic lady, paddled from Cornwall to Scotland. Many different things that she's done, and she's involved in many fantastic environmental projects. And she's just recently campaigning for one of the resorts in the Maldives to protect the wave. I think it's chickens and coats. Yeah. And the support that just one person like Cal generates, hopefully, is going to protect a fantastic ocean environment to stop this development. So collectively, we are strong. You mentioned B Corp, and I'm going to big up the WSA here a little bit. We're very proud to be a B Corp member, and it's a fantastic thing for any of the audience that are listening now. As Chris has mentioned it, it is challenging to gain your B Corp status, but it's a really good thing, and I would thoroughly recommend you go and have a look at that. Any of the links that Chris has mentioned, again, we'll probably we'll email them out to you after the presentation. I've just got to have maybe one or two more questions then, Chris. I'm just mindful of the time for you. You've, here we go, Kelly said, not sure if you'll have time for this question, but what advice would you give someone wanting to begin a career in raising awareness and making changes for ocean activism?
Someone wanted to start a career in it?
Yeah.
Well, if you can get a bit of an education, it'll always help. Although I completely fluffed it, so I completely failed all my A levels.
Me too.
But read good materials. Get hold of the books, gain a broad understanding, and understand. So things like triple bottom line thinking, things like B Corporation, things like listening to Mark Carney. There's a thought, but there's a school of thought that says business is bad, money's bad, but I put it that we will live on the face of this planet in harmony with it. When we use every tool that's used to create the crap version of it, we use those tools better to create our version of it.
Yeah.
And at the moment, that's not what we're doing. The other big issue for someone who's wanting to do this work, and there's varying levels, and everybody working every different part of it, all is valid as well. I mentioned the team earlier, but communications, we have the scientific and engineering know-how, or we can develop it. Our biggest challenge is communicating and winning. But when I was yesterday, I did a talk yesterday, a motivational talk to about 75 members of staff for the WWF UK. And again, like they all needed that. They need to understand that, the person who is the admin person doing the, entering the members onto the database or doing the, the accounts or the books, they're just as important as the actual front of house campaigner.
Yeah, collectively we're strong.
And, if you're wanting a career in it, get in there at whatever level you can.
Yeah.
And don't be proud. I've done everything in my life. I've been a brickies labourer. I've, scrubbed you know, I've done anything and everything. Just be involved and always take the opportunity to step in and listen to others as well. Gain wisdom from as many people as you can.
That's excellent advice. So I hope that helps, the answer there. One person says, should we be doing the same for our rivers as our seas? And best way that we can do that. So this is not all about oceans, and you'll be very well aware of the Save Our Rivers charity, for which WSA, that's 1% for the Planet, that's our chosen charity that we donate 1% of revenue to. So I guess I'm answering your own question, but absolutely, yes, we should be doing the same for our rivers.
Yeah, absolutely, because all of our water on the planet is all linked. You know, and there's you know, rivers have a thing called a river catchment plan. So every kind of river, all the tributaries that all feed into it is part of a river catchment plan, and those river catchment plans are part of the legislation that protects the rivers, and then those rivers protect the oceans.
Yeah. So
even further back into it than that, we need to understand what we do around a waterway, or, you know, whether the roads, or, you know, does a road wash into a waterway or whatever. So
for those of you out there,
hi Charlie. Charlie just messaged. So
Save Our Rivers is the charity that you wouldn't look at, a really good one. Finally then, Chris, because again, I'm mindful of time and I'm really appreciative of you giving up your time. Question that Sarah's asking, you may have seen it, and I want to ask the same as well. Do you still have the giant inflatable turd?
I don't know.
Oh,
it's over at SAS. They've got it. They've still got one. In fact, they had to get a second one made. When we used to do something, yeah, well, you'd remember Surf to Save contest.
Yeah. Yes.
Where the brilliant late Howard Stott, who was an amazing guy, and him and Seish and Watty and a few others up at Polzetti. And one of the things that we used to help raise money was we would half deflate the inflatable turd and then sit a kid on one end of it and then jump on the other and bounce them up off the turd. Probably get arrested for that kind of behaviour nowadays, but
fantastic.
Yeah, no, we kind of split the seams of it, but yeah.
But there is a replica, or
they have to get another one made. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lovely story. Well, on behalf of the WSA and our listeners, thank you ever so much, and really inspirational. Like I said, if you don't mind if we put some questions that we haven't been able to answer, and we will get back to you. So sorry, viewers, if we haven't had the time to answer all of the questions. We will be running some other webinars. We've been doing this in each of the lockdowns. The next one, we've got a little bit of a break, but the next one is on the 5th of March, and it's it's going to be presented by a paramedic friend of mine. Quite a good one. It's called Medical Essentials and What to Do if your paddle buddy gets ill or hurt. So really, really good one, that. And Gordon really knows his stuff, having been a lifeguard, surf instructor as well. And now he's an emergency paramedic on the helicopters up in the northeast. We've got some CPD sessions coming out as well. They're on Wednesdays. Everything's on our Facebook page. So if you want to look into those a little bit more, that's where you'll find out the information. So I'm going to sign off now, and thank you ever so much, Chris. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and what fantastic work you've done, and keep the good work up.
Yeah. Can I just say as well, thanks to everybody for tuning in. You know, like, it means a lot when you get a kind of a good audience. And thanks for caring enough as well. And believe that we can make it, that it will be our world and we can do this. Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Thanks very much. Have a good
weekend. Take care. You too. Bye.
See ya. Bye.